My name is Andrew Weber, and I have been studying this semester on immigrant parent involvement. I'm curious in this topic because in my school we have a high population of immigrant parents who are not involved with their child's education. And I would like just some resources and some information that I can take back to my school to help get these parents more involved. And I strongly believe before you can get parents involved, that you have to have a better understanding of your parent population. And so that is why I chose this article for this week's analysis. It is called Stages of Immigrant Parent Involvement Survivors to Leaders. And so this article just discusses getting to know your parents and where they're at um, before you can really foster that parent engagement and really improve their child's academic achievement. This article is written by Young Chang Hung. She is a family involvement Title I specialist from the Maryland State Department of Education. It is also written by Jennifer Love, who is an ELL family engagement specialist in the Prince George's County Public Schools, which is in Maryland. She is also the president of the Maryland ELL Family Involvement Network. It is important to note before I get started that the article does discuss these public schools in Maryland quite a bit. So when they're giving examples of what they do with their immigrant families, they're talking about these public schools. The beginning of the article spends some time really talking about how all immigrant families are not alike, and nor are their needs or their interests. These families who come to the United States from different countries are very, very diverse, and they have a very diverse background with a wide range of experiences. It discusses how you can have one parent in your school who is illiterate in their own native language, and that you can also have in the same building parents who are highly educated, that they even have an educational level equivalent to a PhD. So just because they're immigrant families does not mean that they're illiterate. They also discuss how some immigrants don't speak English, and we kind of assume when we think of the term immigrant, we think of that they have a different language than English, but that's also not the case. A lot of times families migrate to the United States from other countries that their main language is English. So again, you're going to have a very diverse population with your immigrant families, some who speak English and are fluent in it, and others who have no experience and no knowledge of English language. And this really poses a challenge for schools and educators who want to help their parents be more involved, because you're going to just have a very wide range of needs within those parents. So what they have done is these two authors discuss using the model Stages of Immigrant Parent Involvement, because this model really focuses on where their parents' needs are, their skills, and their interests as they move through the stages. So, this model has 4 stages. All immigrant parents fall within one of these stages. The first stage is called cultural survivors. These parents face just a wide range of challenges because their real priority is just taking care of their families. These parents have a tendency to have just arrived in the United States, but that's not always the case. I will later in this presentation discuss that not always are all parents in this stage new to the United States. These parents also could be illiterate in their native language. And it's important to know too that most of these parents may need to work multiple jobs just to take care of their families. They are more worried about being able to put food on the table and make sure that they have a safe place to live. And so, because they are so focused on just taking care of their family, they tend to have little time to learn about their child's school and be actively involved in their education. So, just because your parents are in this stage of survivor doesn't necessarily mean that they don't want to be involved, they just don't have the time. The next stage is cultural learners. These parents are more comfortable with our school cultures. They tend to be more engaged in learning about their child's school. They communicate more with schools with the help of a translator. These parents prefer to have documents sent home that are translated in their own language. And they are more comfortable attending school activities like parent-teacher conferences. Again, they may need that help of the translator, but they want to be there. They want to be active in their child's education. The third stage is cultural connectors. These parents are more familiar with the school system here in the United States and its policies and procedures. So they tend to share information with other immigrant families about programs, activities that could support children and their parents. And then these parents tend to be more encouraged and empowered to help those parents in those two other stages of cultural survivors and learners and helping them become more involved in their child's education. So they start to really connect those other immigrant families in with the schools. And then the last stage is cultural leaders. These parents are truly the face and the voice of their ethnic community. They tend to advocate for all immigrant families. They communicate the needs of these families to the schools and the district. They tend to participate in leadership programs and trainings to sharpen their own personal leadership skills. And they really want to learn about how they can become more of a leader in the school and the district. And because of this, they begin to speak up for other immigrant families and their child who don't necessarily feel like they have a voice. The article then goes on to really discuss that time really does not determine what stage the parent or the family is in. The article says that the amount of time an immigrant has been in the United States does not determine a parent stage of involvement. And then it also says that a parent does not necessarily move from one stage to another. The author actually discusses her own personal story as a perfect example of that time does not determine where a parent will be. Her mother was a single mother who migrated from the United States, or migrated to the United States from South Korea. When she came to the United States, she definitely was a culture survivor. She spent her days working 10 to 12 hours, 6 days a week for a very long period of time of over 10 years. So because of her focus is just to take care of her family, she was not really involved in her children's education. So she was not actively involved in the school. The author discusses how her mother went and registered her for sixth grade and never went back into a school building until the author's high school graduation. Her mother never went to parent-teacher conferences, never went on field trips. She just spent her days just trying to take care of her family of 5. And so even after all 4 of her children graduated, her mother is still a cultural survivor and has never moved out of that stage. So this is just a great example of how it doesn't matter how long you are in the States, you may be in the same stage your whole entire life. So as educators, what can we do to help these parents? Now that we kind of have an idea of what each stage is, what can we do to help? And so this first part talked about how to support cultural survivors and learners. And the authors really just discuss the importance of making that home to school connection and creating a partnership with parents as early as you can. In the public schools in Maryland, they use KinderConnect, which is a program focused on EL students who don't go to preschool. So these are just workshops that they use to teach parents of the skills that their child needs to be ready for kindergarten. They give their parents activities that are focused on literacy and math that can be done at home and really support English language learning and even enrich their own personal language. This is all in hopes of creating that partnership and commitment with the parents to continue to teach and be involved in their child's education at home. So as educators, what can we take away with this is that you may not have a KinderConnect, but it is important that we educate our parents in these 2 stages of survivor and learners and teach them of what they can be doing at home with their child. Just because these parents are in these stages does not mean that they don't want to help. They just may not know how. And so it's our job to educate them and give them resources and ideas of what to do to help encourage learning at home. Also, how to support cultural learners and cultural connectors. They talk a lot about how to use those parents that are the connectors in helping educate the parents in the stages of cultural learners and cultural survivors. They give an example in the article where they have found that a lot of immigrant families were not allowing their kids to be part of field trips. One example here is that the 5th graders have this opportunity to go to a STEM camp overnight, and a lot of these immigrant parents are not letting their kids go. So what they have done as a district is to use their cultural connectors, those parents, to help educate families on the importance of these opportunities. So they created this International Family Day where they take parents of kindergarten through 4th graders. So before they get to 5th grade, they take these parents up to the camp for a day. And they just let the parents be involved in these activities that their kid is going to do when they're in 5th grade. They do everything from team building activities to going down to the local river and looking at the ecosystem and talking about conservation efforts there. They go on family hay rides. And then lastly, which I think is the most important part, is they really have a panel of prior participants who and their parents who are in that cultural connector stage to educate these parents of why they should let their kids go to this awesome opportunity. And through the years, they have found more and more families from immigrant families are more willing to let their kids go because they realize how important it is. So, as educators, we may not have an International Family Day, or we may not have an overnight STEM adventure that we go through, but we could take away from this that we can use our own personal connectors that are in the school to bridge that gap and really help bring in those other parents and teach them why it's important that their kids are involved in these school activities. The last piece that they have for supporting cultural connectors and cultural leaders is they give an example of Anya, who is a parent from Poland. She is fluent in English, but is not familiar with the United States schools and their procedure and how they do things. So this mother actually learns about the International Parent Leadership Program in her school district and ends up participating in this program. It is a program that spends 6 weeks teaching them about their district, the acronyms that they use, PTA, Booster Club, even the school board. It just teaches their parents all the different things available in the district. And this helps this just helps equip and empower her to know her district better. And then she is empowered to take that information and share it and really become a leader in the district. And I know in my school that we don't have very many cultural leaders. And so that is something that as educators we can take away from this, is to find those parents who are cultural learners and connectors and come beside them and guide them into becoming true leaders in the school to really help bridge that gap between those other parents who are just trying to survive, or they're just learning how to be here. Come alongside them and guide them through that process. So now what? Now as educators, what do we do with all this information? Hopefully this has showed you or made you think about where your parents fall and what stage they may be in, and then open up your eyes of what could be done to help your parents no matter what stage they're in. Because really, family engagement is a shared responsibility of schools, families, and the communities. And it's really important that these come together for really the benefit of the student. As educators, we have a commitment to engaging all families, no matter what their race, language, and so on. And then it's also important to remember that there's not a one-size-fits-all for programs to meet all the needs of parents. There are lots of resources out there of programs and models that we can use to better engage with our parents, but you're going to have to adapt it to your school and your district of what your parents truly need. I have listed here a few resources. If you're interested in learning about that International Parent Leadership Program that the authors mention and that are used in Maryland. So here are 2 links that you can use. And then I've also shared a link to the article if you are interested in seeing that and reading it. So hopefully you have learned something through this presentation. Maybe it's opened up your eyes to kind of see where your parents fall